The last time this happened, Russia was the Soviet Union and Leonid Brezhnev was in the Kremlin. Not since 1976, nearly half a century, has Moscow sent a rocket to the moon. But they, and many others, are seeking a new first. For this, the Luna 25 to land on the moon's south pole, something no nation has done before, and potentially find water.
I hope that we will be the first, and if, of course, water is found, a very serious prospect opens up. That is, building a lunar base.
Welcome to the new space race, where geopolitics becomes astropolitics, and this current set of galactic games is a lot different to the last one.
Time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth.
That Cold War battle was about proving who was on top. The Russians had just got Yuri Gagarin into space first.
That's one small step for man.
But then Neil Armstrong made it onto the moon.
One giant leap for mankind.
It was all macho, rocket-swinging, one-upmanship. But they all went and came back. Now, they all want to stay.
This time the idea is that, again, it's not just going back to the moon, but it's can we build a base on the moon? Can we do long-term science experiments on the moon? Can we pave a way that eventually we'll be able to get humans from the Earth to the moon and eventually to Mars?
Russia isn't alone in this. China became only the third country to land a spacecraft on the moon in 2013. India's Chandrayaan-3 mission took off last month and is hoping to land on the moon by late August. But the Americans are still the only ones to have had boots on the lunar ground. NASA's Artemis project hopes to do that again by the end of 2025. But who will get to the all-important lunar South Pole first, the place where scientists believe there's water?
In those permanently shadowed craters, there is believed to be frozen water in the form of ice. And when we're thinking about kind of long-term habitation on the moon, it's going to be incredibly useful to have some of these resources that we know humans need to survive.
The far side of the moon is extremely rugged.
And that could even include minerals and sources of energy. But with countries fighting to get there first, are there any laws governing all of this? The Americans want countries to sign the Artemis Accords, a set of space principles. But China and Russia haven't agreed, leading NASA's head to warn that Beijing might occupy the moon. China rejects that.
Our Space Force is defending our country.
And it was Washington, after all, who set up the US Space Force, a new galactic fighting unit.
We will imagine the unimaginable, anticipate the inconceivable.
Yes, it is secure.
Cooperation in space is still possible for the greater good, as we see even today with the International Space Station. Cosmonauts and astronauts working together. But with Russia about to pull out and planning a rival lunar base alongside China, could the divisions on Earth soon replicate themselves in the skies and stars above?
Kieran Woodley reporting. Well, joining me now is the journalist and author Tim Marshall, whose latest book, The Future of Geography, examines the renewed space race for the moon and beyond. And Tim joins us from his den of maps. Tim, what are you planning with all those maps?
Well, I need to update them, don't I, for the Sea of Crises and the Sea of Tranquility, but also the south pole of the moon, specifically the Shackleton crater.
Right.
I suspect that's where the Russians are headed. They're deliberately trying to get in a couple of days before the Indians. And this leads to the geopolitics. Why is it so important? It's not just about building on from that string of firsts they have, first satellite, first dog, first man, first woman in space, etc. If they're the first to the South Pole, they can say to the Chinese, with whom they are now a junior partner, we are valuable to you, we'll be testing for the water. It puts them, I wouldn't say equal to the Chinese, but that's the geopolitics of what's going on and why they're trying to get in ahead of the Indians.
So this is about much more than just prestige.
Yes, and in the report you saw Kennedy. Kennedy actually said in the early 60s that they had to get there first to prove to the world, in a time when people were wondering which fork in the road to take, the communist road or the democracy road, that they had to get there to prove that this was the right fork to take. It's moved on a lot from that. I mean, you remember after Apollo 15, I think it was, nobody went back. Why? Well, what was the point of going back? They'd been there, done that, and got the T-shirt. Now, if there is mineable amounts of uranium, titanium, small amounts of lithium, if there's iron, and it's thought they are there in large quantities, the economic model might suggest that with oxygen, which you can get from the water, fuel, which you can get from the water, you can have a base. And which major country is going to be left out of what could potentially be the 21st century version of oil?
America? Will America be left out?
They are going hell for leather.
They are going hell for leather as well.
They are the authors of the Artemis Accords. And there's 29 countries have joined up, including the UK and India, by the way. But of course, Russia and China are not going to join. And to answer the question that was asked at the end of your report, it already does reflect the geopolitics of Earth, the astropolitics out there. We are going up as two blocks, an American-led bloc and a Chinese junior partner Russia bloc, and all the things that are surrounding it are replicated with the tensions and competitions that we see here.
And could it get nasty?
Not yet, but I don't think the existing laws, such as they are fit for purpose for the 21st century, and therefore it's a bit of a Klondike gold rush. I think it'll only potentially get a bit messy is if there are certain areas on the moon, as I said, the Shackleton crater, where most of the really valuable resources are, particularly if there was lithium. The Artemis Accords has talked about having exclusion zones or safety zones. Sounds like sovereignty to me.
In literally 15 seconds, who's going to win this race, as you know, from where you're standing or sitting at the moment?
At the moment, the Russians are trying to get in on the 21st of August. The Indians are looking at the 23rd. Long term, Chinese want a moon base by 2028. That's ambitious. One of the two blocks will have them in the early 2030s.
Get those maps updated. Tim Marshall, thanks very much indeed.